Now, how long will the bubbles form, if at all? How long do they last?
Okay, so on this, like on this one that we did, which is plastic, or if you're doing it over something that's got color or primer or anything else like that, you should be able to release all your bubbles in about 30 minutes time. I break it up, you know, the first 10 minutes and then another one. By then you should be having all the bubbles out. Like I said, it has a bubble release in the formula, so it will release. If you're working with your epoxy where it's really cold, it could extend that, and you may not even be able to get all your bubbles out because you've mixed them in so deep that it can't release.
That makes sense.
But if you're doing something over wood, it's very critical. If you're doing something over wood or up against wood, that you seal that wood because it's porous. And what happens is if you're going over a porous surface, then the bubbles aren't coming from in the epoxy, they're coming from the epoxy starts to film and then some of it penetrates in. Now we have a void. So it's not a bubble that you've mixed in or anything else, it's a void. It's called outgassing. So the idea is you have to prime your wood first. I like to use the 2112 because it dries so quickly and I can put on multiple coats. I mean, I can even seal balsa wood or cedar in 1 or 2 shots. It's absolutely amazing. But some people like to use epoxy, and I don't like to do that because when you put the epoxy on, if you get any gassing or penetration, then you put another coat of epoxy, you're still going to have that same void. And then you still have the same problem. So you may end up wasting 3 or 4 or 5 coats of epoxy trying to fix a problem that you should have fixed before you even got started.
Now, adding too much like acrylic or anything, would that cause too many bubbles?
No, you shouldn't. The other colors you can't add too much. The acrylic, you could add too much, but you could go up to, I use a half of a 16-ounce bottle in a 2-gallon kit. So you don't have to add very much of this. If you were trying to pigment your epoxy into this color, you would just add a little bit. It doesn't take very much. And you can mix a little bit and have it so it's semi-opaque, or you can add more, but it doesn't take much to create an opaque situation in the epoxy. So I've heard some people that added like 1/3 of volume. That's just way too much because you don't need it to get the color you want, first off, and then secondly, it makes the epoxy sticky. It's not going to make any more bubbles, but it does make it very difficult to work with because it's sticky.
So what advice would you give to crafters like myself that are pouring the epoxy into the molds and the molds may be like slightly deeper? How do we get those bubbles out?
You're going to do it in layers. So you put a little bit in, just torch it or whatever the situation that you might do. A heat gun works okay, but not as well. But just lightly torch it. Put some more in, lightly torch it, put some more in, lightly torch it.
So just layers.
Yeah, you can actually build this up in several different layers. Once it's tapped, you can add another layer to it because you can actually monitor it. They have a little temperature gun you can buy at Harbor Freight for $20. That's always good to have when you're working with epoxies because you can monitor the temperature. Once it starts to cycle down from the reaction, then you can add another coat. You don't have to wait until anything else happens. But once you notice the temperature is downtrending, you're good to go with more coats.
Oh, that's good to know because that would help with the time frame of setting our cups.